Welcome to another video, ladies and gents. This one is going to be a good one. Well, hey everyone, hope you are all doing well. I'm recording this video because, as many of you know, I have been a professional 360 virtual tour photographer for 5 years, just over 5 years now. And I solely shoot using a mirrorless camera, a proper 360 setup, simply because I believe that it's important to future-proof tours that are for commercial businesses. So the quality needs to be there to cover things like improvements in resolution of monitors and so on and so forth. However, not all businesses have got the budget to be able to afford a full-blown tour shot with a Sony a7 IV or whatever it may be. So I've been thinking recently that one-shot cameras are becoming better and better and better now. And every now and then a camera comes along that sort of piques my interest and makes me think, oh, hang on, maybe this could have a good use case. One of those cameras has been the Trisio Lite. The guys over at Trisio were kind enough to send this over to me for review. So I wanted to share that with you. I don't normally do unboxings, but I thought I'd just do a quick one. I have already taken this out of the box and I've put it back in. Everyone does that anyway. But it's a very, very simple packaging. It's really, really high quality. So what you get basically when you open the box is you get this really, really nice case that they give you. Nice blue color. It's very, very well made. And then inside this, we have instructions. Don't really need those, so it's really easy. A nice little cleaning cloth for your lens. We'll get into that in a minute. Charging cable. This little bit here is basically to go onto your light stand or tripod. I would recommend using a light stand with pretty much any single shot camera or one shot camera. And then you have the camera itself, which looks like so. Okay. Now, what's really great with this is that, as you can see, it hasn't got a lens on both sides. It's just got a single lens. Okay, so the way this works is you basically connect this into here, click, and then you screw this onto your tripod or the other way around. What I normally do is just screw this onto the tripod and then click the camera on. And then the camera itself has got a motor inside it just at the bottom here, and then that will rotate when you take your photos. So it rotates once fully round to basically do a measurement of the ambient light level in the room. And then it will take 4 individual photos, okay, by turning itself around. I will go into shooting and setup and everything shortly, so we can go through how all that works. But there are some drawbacks with that. Obviously, if you've got people moving in the scene, then it's going to most likely cause stitching problems. You're going to get people cut in half and so on and so forth. And also, if you wanted to do, say, for example, elevated photography, so whack this up onto a great big pole, then if it's crooked or anything like that, then you may come across issues. However, the industries that I see this being useful for, as I mentioned before, is 100% real estate, because it has actually got a built-in HDR function, which, from my experience so far, works incredibly well. It's very, very good. I have found that some of the images, when they've come through, do look a little bit washed out. But what we'll do is we'll jump onto the computer shortly and we'll have a look at some of the images, and I'll do a quick edit on them just so you can see what can be done with those images. Now, another thing to bear in mind, and I'm just going to get a few stats up here on my phone, is that the images themselves are in JPEG only. Okay, so at the moment it doesn't shoot in RAW or DNG. It would be nice to have that. Maybe that's something that the guys at Trisio could introduce later on down the line with a firmware update or something like that. I know that you can separate the 4 images out that the camera takes if you want to. So if you wanted to stitch the 4 images yourself in PTGUI, that is a possibility as well. However, the stitching inside the camera is absolutely fantastic. I've taken about 20 or 30 odd photos with this camera, and I have looked quite closely and I've only come across maybe 2 tiny stitching errors. So there's no reason, in my opinion, to use an external stitching software with it at all. The resolution of the camera is 8K. So, you know, it's a very high quality image that it produces. So the actual photo size is 8,000 by 4,000, which for a one-shot camera is pretty high. And it's very light as well. So it only weighs 150 grams. So it's very light, really portable. The case is tiny as well. So it's really easy just to slip into a camera bag. Measurement wise, it's 147 millimeters high, 51 millimeters wide, and 23 millimeters deep. Okay, so it's not massive, probably just about the size of a mobile phone, really, height wise. The internal storage is 8 gigabytes. Okay, so that will give you enough for around 300 photos, which for a normal tour is more than enough. However, if you are shooting, for example, multiple properties in the day, then what you can do is when you take an image on the camera here, it will, you can set it to download onto your phone. Okay, so then what you could do is you could then make sure that they're downloaded onto your phone, just as a backup, maybe even just transfer them onto a portable hard drive or something like that, and then delete them off the camera, and that's going to free up some space for you. There is no expandable storage on here, so you can't put a memory card in. That would be nice as well. It's a USB Type-C connection on the side here, so that is how you would basically charge the camera. I have noticed that I did try to plug it into the computer, and what it does is it only brings up the files within the camera that aren't sort of fully stitched and full JPEGs. So what you need to do is you need to actually plug your phone into the computer and then take all the images off your phone. Okay. Battery life, you're looking at, in good temperatures, about 200 minutes, which was what, three hours. Okay, and that, they say, is when the temperature is around 25 degrees, which in this country is pretty rare at the moment, even in the summer. So I reckon probably 2 to 3 hours battery life. You would be able to connect a portable charger onto the camera itself. However, I would be wary of that personally, because when the camera is rotating, the camera may end up getting caught up. You could always just unplug it and just untangle it and reset it each time if you're in a pinch and you need to charge the battery. But you could always, between shoots, just plug it in with a portable battery pack and just top it up that way, which should give you enough juice for your next shoot. Supporting devices, it says you need Android 4.4 or above, or iOS 9 or above. So yeah, I mean, I think overall the packaging, the build quality seems to be extremely good. I've been really impressed so far. So what we'll do now is we will have a quick setup and test of the camera, so I can show you first of all how it operates. And second of all, I can show you through the app and how that works. That's another thing that I've been really impressed with. It's a really clean app. It connects nice and quickly. So yeah, let's have a play and see what this thing can do. Okay, so let's have a quick play around with the Trisio. What I've got here is just a very simple light stand. This is what I normally use with a one-shot camera, when I use a one-shot camera, which I think I'm going to be more from now on, in certain circumstances. The reason I use a light stand is because the top of the stand here is really slim. If you put one of these on a normal tripod mount and you've got a massive, great big sort of plate at the bottom of it, you're going to have a huge problem with your nadir at the bottom. And that's another thing to mention, is that the nadir on this is pretty good. If you're using a light stand and you have the feet folded in, if I just show you here, they're quite slim. I'm going to scratch my ceiling, but they're quite slim at the bottom. So I've made them as narrow as possible. And then the plate at the bottom as well, you can see this particular stand has got like a little plate here at the very bottom. So I just basically set it so that's kind of touching the floor. If you are doing it on an uneven surface, then you may have to do some kind of leveling, but that can be done in Affinity Photo or Photoshop pretty easily. So but for your normal property shoots on sort of hard floors and carpets and things like that, this works absolutely fine. So what we do is, I'm just going to take this off and then screw this onto the top here. This is the little grey bit that connects to the camera. And you'll see that that actually is quite small. If it'll focus. No, it's not going to. There we go. Try. No. Okay. Well, you can see anyway. So what we do then is basically connect the camera like so, and then we are on. Okay. So that's a very quick and easy setup, which is what we want, especially when we're in the field, shooting a virtual tour for a property, or any other circumstances really. It's completely up to you, obviously, how you use this. So what we then want to do is turn it on, and it has got some rather funky sounds that it makes when you use it. So space age.
Battery high.
Yeah, it tells you the battery level as well, which I really like. So if you turn it on and it says battery low, you're like, oh dear, okay, should have charged it. So what I'm going to do now is I'll bring the app up on the screen for you so we can see. Now, the interface is really nice, as I said, on the app. It's really easy to use. When you first get the camera, what it will do is it'll ask you to connect to the camera, so you just open up your Wi-Fi settings, and then you literally just click on the Wi-Fi, which is normally listed as Trisio, and then it connects, and I'm pretty sure it remembers the network for you, so you do need to connect each time, but what I found is the connection is a bit faster, the sort of from the second time onwards that you do it. It's really fast. So if I just open up my Wi-Fi here, and there we go, we've got Trisio, so just connect to that, and we're done. And then it says, there we go, it says connected to Trisio. From here, you've got the settings that you can go into. This is just your general user agreements and everything like that. Then you've got your album, so you can actually view the images that you've taken. And then when you go into the camera, it shows you a preview. And obviously, because this is just a single lens, it shows you a preview of what the lens is seeing, which is quite handy, because then you can see if it's taking a shot. If you're out of the room, you can see if anyone has stepped into your shot or anything like that, which is nice to do, but it doesn't give you a full 360 view because there's only one lens. So from here, what we can do in the bottom right, BBC News, is we can open up the camera settings, and then we can see how much storage we've got left. We can set up a self timer. We can also set an nadir logo, which is really nice. At the moment, I've got mine switched off. It does come with a pre-made one by Trisio, so you can have that if you want. But if you do want to have a nadir logo, then you can basically set that to cover your tripod automatically, and you can upload your own one, which I think is really nice to have. However, personally, what I tend to do is I tend to remove the tripod anyway, so it's a nice clean sort of nadir, and then I'll normally put my own sort of see-through PNG logo over the top of that, which is really nice. You've got this new feature called Any Scene, which I wasn't really aware of before, but it says obviously it's in a beta test, but to turn on to inhibit overexposure caused by bright light. So if you're shooting, say for example, on a day that's really sunny outside, then it will do its best to adjust all the exposure levels for you. automatically. And from what I've seen so far, it does do a very, very, very good job. Okay, and then you've got your camera sounds, so you can turn on and off the camera sounds, which will save you a bit of battery life. Okay, so to take our shot, what we can do first is we can actually select an album. Okay, so you can create an album. So say, for example, if you were on a property shoot, you could call it 1, 2, 3 Nick Road. Okay, and then you've got the photo, a name for each photo, which is amazing, because when you're importing your images, it's nice to be able to see, you know, all the rooms that you've taken. So they're all pre-made for you. You may not have the one in there that you want. So what you can do is you can do a custom name if you want to. So you just click on custom and then you can pop the name in there. But I'm just going to call this one kitchen, because that's where I am. So what we do from there is literally just click the red button. And it says camera is resetting. I'm going to be, the other good thing with this is you can follow the camera around, okay, like this. So at the moment, what it's doing is it's basically scanning the room for the correct exposure levels, and you can hear now that it started taking the photos. So that's the first one. Moving around for the second one. And then the third one. And then the last one, okay? And you can see the preview on the screen, and then from there, it reads all the information. This is in real time, by the way, so you can see how quickly it does the job for you. Stitch in the panorama. That's done, and then it's saved that image, okay? So let's have a look. There we go, that's the image. Okay, what I'll do in a minute is we will have a look on the computer in a little bit more detail, just so we can take a look at the files that come out of this camera, and we'll do a little bit of editing and tweaking. Because as I said before, they are slightly washed out. Editing for me is a complete personal preference. It's completely up to you what kind of style you want to go for. Because the lens and the sensor on this camera is obviously nothing compared to a full-size mirrorless, you know, DSLR lens and full-frame sensor. So my opinion really is that for a camera of this size, the quality that it creates is very, very, very impressive. So what we'll do is we'll jump onto the computer now and we'll have a look at the files. Probably going to take a few more pictures just so we can compare different rooms, and then we can do a quick edit on them and see what the results are like. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom, and I've taken 3 different images here. One of them is basically in a normally sort of lit room, daylight, with some sort of soft light coming in. The next one here is a darker shot. Basically, I shut the shutters in the room, turn some lights on, keep the TV on as well, just so we can see how it deals with the highlights from that. And then I've also done an outdoor shot as well. So if we start just by opening the first image, we can see straight away that the sharpness is 100% there. The quality is rather impressive, actually. It does look a bit washed out, as previously mentioned, but I think for a camera of this level, it's incredibly impressive. You will need to do some adjustments on the image, but that can be quite easy. I mean, you could basically create some presets that you could apply on import when you bring them into Lightroom or whatever other software that you use, and then if you need to do a few more tweaks, you can tweak it from there. So let's do a little bit of work on this image here. So if I click on develop, we can see here I've got my highlight warning switched on, that we are blown out in the sky over here, so we can just reduce the highlights down slightly. I probably would boost the exposure slightly. And then we can just check our white balance. From previous tests, the white balance has been pretty close. So see that the change there is minimal. I'll just undo that, and then we can try and pick a different spot. Let's pick on this grey colour here. See, yeah, it's very, very, very close. the auto white balance on here, which is very impressive. Then if we look at the histogram in the top right here, it is slightly pushed up at the top here in the mid-tones. So, you know, what I'll do is I'll probably just bring the blacks down a bit just to give it a bit more punch. Push the whites up, which would bring in a bit more clipping in, but then we can bring that back with the highlights. And then if we want, we can open up the shadows a bit more and just sort of play around with it until we get to somewhere that we like. With regards to colour cast, I can see it does look quite yellow. So, you know, how much work you do on this is completely up to you. But, you know, what I may tend to do is maybe just drop the yellows just ever so slightly in here, just like by -15. You do have to be careful when doing something like that, obviously, because we've got a wooden floor in here, so that's going to affect, you know, the colour of the floor slightly. But, you know, already, if we just do a before and after, you know, we've got a vast improvement on there. And then sometimes what I do, you do have to be careful with this, is do some local adjustments in the image. So if I just push K on my keyboard, that will bring up my brush tool. And then I normally just use sort of about 0.7 ish, and then just very gently. You've got to be careful not to go to the edges of the image, otherwise when it sort of goes into a 360 image, you're going to get a line down this section of the image. So always keep away from the edge. But then what I'll do is maybe just brighten up certain areas just a little bit, just to highlight them. Being careful not to go to the edge. If you do go to the edge, then you can always turn on your overlay and just check to see where you're painting, and then just hold down the Alt key and you can just do a stroke down the side here just to delete out anything that's there. Okay, so so yeah, that looks good to me. And what we can do now is move on to the next one, which was shot in a darker room. Now again, straight away, this is really impressive. The image is a bit dark, so if we come up here, we can boost it up just a tiny bit like so. We don't want to, we want to try and avoid overexposing certain areas. But so if you just bring those highlights down, open up the shadows slightly, you know, we can even sort of, you know, add a bit of contrast in. And again, editing is completely down to the individual. Everyone has got a different style. And so what I can do is, again, check the white balance. Just click on that. Okay, now that looks a little bit too blue to me. So I might just bring that back a smidge. And if, again, I always look at the histogram just to check that we've got any sort of, you know, wiggle rooms. We add a few more blacks in the area here, which we have because we're not showing any clipping. So if I just move that back here, turn on my warnings so we can see the blue areas that are showing up are where it's pure black. So I normally just push it so they just start showing up like so, and then turn that off. And then if we wanted to maybe add a little bit of, I don't think this really needs it, but you can always add a bit of, sorry, not vibrance into the image, just maybe 15, 20 or so, just to give it a bit more colour punch. But the thing that impressed me the most here is that this TV on the wall, this is just a static sort of screensaver image that's on there. This is incredible because even when I've taken sort of, you know, HDR shots with my, you know, Sony camera, and chucked it through, you know, HDR processing software, it does take a while to get to this kind of result. So the fact that it does that all in camera for you is just quite impressive. So again, what we could do is we could bring up the brush and just, you know, highlight some areas here. Again, you know, trying not to go over the edges. That is bringing in a few overexposed areas. But to be fair, if we just switch off the warning, you know, it doesn't look too bad. I don't think many people are gonna notice that too much. And do remember that this, you know, the use case that I see this being used for is, you know, quick lower end real estate shoots. Well, not so much lower end, but just, you know, high quantity for agents that don't want to pay the prices that, you know, DSLR mirrorless tours cost. So yeah, this is an absolutely perfect solution for that. So yeah, I mean, I'd be happy with that. You know, maybe a few, you know, other sort of tweaks here and there. You know, just changing the yellows and oranges and all that sort of stuff. But that's a nice result, I think, from here. And then if we move on to the outdoor image, this is also very impressive. You know, you can see straight away that the stitching is excellent. There's no, I mean, I've looked at a lot of images that have come out of this camera, and you know, I'm not a massive pixel peeper. I don't. If it's a tiny stitching error, then that really does not bother me at all. But you can see that it's impressive. There's a tiny one up here, I think. Here, yeah, that's one of the power lines, and they are always difficult. You know, generally power lines do struggle. And I did notice when I was taking the photos that the camera was wobbling slightly. So I would recommend getting some weights of some kind, maybe, or just try and keep it in some shelter. But yeah, even in the highlights over here, you can see again a bit of flare coming out from here, but that's going pretty much directly into the sun. So yeah, I mean, if we were to play around with this, we can just, you know, add a few more blacks in. There we go, just make it look a bit more contrasty. Bring the highlights down slightly just to take that, improve this over here, and then we can boost the whites, bit of contrast. You know the deal. And then vibrance, I don't think it really needs it because we've got quite a blue sky there anyway. But yeah, can't hurt. And yeah, I mean, you can play around with this as much as you see fit for your own style. But if we bring up the information in the corner, we can see here that the image is 8,000 by 4,000, which, as I said before, is very impressive for a camera of this price range. I think the retail price of this is, I think, $399 for a camera of that price to create images like this is very impressive. So what I'm going to do now is export these. So it's JPEG, sRGB, quality. I'm going to keep that at 100, and then export. And then what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to open up the 360 viewer and take a little bit of a closer look. One thing you could do is you could use software like Topaz Sharpen, or even Topaz Gigapixel if you wanted to. The Gigapixel would basically give you the opportunity of doubling the resolution, so it would take you up to 16,000 by 8,000. I would be wary of that though, because it does sometimes cause some artifacts in some areas of an image, so you have to be careful. You can mask things out, so you know, it's worth definitely having a play around with. But one thing I would do is run the images through Topaz Sharpen, which will just give you just that extra bit of clarity within the image. In fact, let's have a quick look and see what that will do. Okay, so let's, right, which one should we use? Let's use the kitchen one. Okay, so just double click that, loaded that into here. So it does its thing. And if I go, I normally just zoom out to 50%. And let's go over to here. Okay, and have a look at the difference. So if we slide and have a look and see what's being affected, there we go. So we can see here on this pillow that that's without the sharpening and that's with the sharpening, so it does make quite a big difference. And then even over on this map here, this map sculpture, it just basically just sharpens everything up really nicely. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that that you could use. I have done a video on Topaz Sharpen in a bit more detail, so I'll pop a link to that up in the corner for you now. So yeah, let's have a look at these images that we've just exported. Right, okay, so if we click on that and then just right click and open with PT GUI Viewer. And I'm just going to expand this out like this. So if we have a good look around, you can see that, you know, because we've taken it on a light stand, if you look at the verticals here, they're pretty much straight. When we move around, there may be a little bit of movement. Yeah, there you see that it's slightly off. But you know, if you wanted to make it perfect, then you could adjust that in Affinity Photo. But we can see that I mean, the quality is good. I mean, obviously it's not DSLR mirrorless level, but this camera isn't designed to create images at that level. If we look down at the nadir imprint, because I use the light stand, it's not massive, so that would be very easy to remove. Or, you know, as I said before, when we looked at the menu on the phone, you could just pop a nadir patch over that, just to save time. And yeah, that's I think overall that's a very impressive result. You know, again with stitching errors as well, I can't see any in here. You know, as I said, you know, I'm not a massive stickler for the tiniest little one. But yeah, I think as a result from in-camera stitching, that is absolutely perfect. So I think what this comes down to is time. Okay, you can see that the workflow with this is incredibly quick, especially if you do, you know, sort of do all your edits like this for an outdoor photo, and then, you know, you can save it as a preset within a folder that's called Trisio, whatever it may be. So when you import your images or you just go through them, you can just quickly apply a preset to each one and then just make a few little minor tweaks. So, you know, the workflow overall is set up the camera, take the photo, it stitches it for you. You pull the photos off your phone into the computer, import them into Lightroom, add a preset, and you're done. Okay. I think you'll agree that that is an extremely quick workflow to use. So yeah, I mean, I hope this video's been useful for you, and let's head back for some final words. Well, there we have it. That's my overview of the new Trisio Lite camera. As I've said, I've been really impressed with it. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. It's not going to be for everyone. You know, there's always going to be diehard fans out there that, like myself, I suppose, that, you know, want to, you know, stick to using a full 360 setup. But for the right use case, this camera is probably, you know, quality-wise and build quality-wise as well, one of the best that I've seen. So well done to the team over at Trisio. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and all that jazz. And if you do have any comments or anything, then please do pop them below and I'll try my best to get back to you. But in the meantime, I will see you guys soon. Take care.